The Grand Council chamber was packed with representatives from every species in the Empire. Elena stood before them with Morrison and Chun, presenting a plan that would have been considered insane by Imperial standards. "You want to attack their home?" Emperor Zalthar asked, his flame crown burning low with concern. "Not just attack," Elena clarified. "We want to destroy their central intelligence. The hive mind has to originate somewhere. We find it, we kill it. And the swarm collapses." Admiral Krenthus stepped forward. His initial skepticism about human tactics had faded after Krindle. But this was different. "Such an attack would require splitting our forces," he said. "Some to defend our worlds, some to strike at the enemy." "It is suicide. We've done suicidal before," Morrison said casually. "We're pretty good at it." Chun pulled up historical records. "The Doolittle raid during World War II," he explained. "America sent bombers to attack the Japanese mainland when everyone said it was impossible. It didn't win the war, but it changed the momentum. The difference is you're proposing we do win the war with this strike," Reckner pointed out. "Correct," Elena confirmed. "We tracked the Vecthar assault patterns back through their previous attacks. They're coming from the Void Reach Nebula, specifically from a massive structure at its center." Morrison brought up sensor data. "We detected massive energy signatures consistent with a biomechanical intelligence core," she explained. "If we destroy that, the hive mind dies, without coordination. The individual Vecthar ships become basically mindless." The council erupted in debate. Some species argued for traditional defense. Others saw the logic in Elena's plan but feared the risk. Shkar stood up, skin shifting through determined colors. "I have fought beside the humans," Shkar announced. "I have seen their tactics work when our traditional methods failed. I believe they can do this." Gerthik, the Kavrax warrior who'd lost to Morrison, also stood. "Humans understand warfare in ways we have forgotten," he said. "They have survived by being pragmatic instead of honorable. Perhaps it is time we learn from them." More voices joined in support. The younger species who'd been fascinated by humanity from the beginning. Veterans who'd seen too many friends die in traditional battles. Civilians who just wanted their families safe. Emperor Zalthar watched his empire deciding its own fate. "How many ships would you need?" he finally asked. 10,000 for the strike force," Elena said. "Volunteers only, because this is going to be dangerous." "And the rest?" Zalthar asked. "Defending key positions using the tactics we used at Krindle," Chun explained. "Mobile defense, ambush points, strategic withdrawal when needed. We make every world they attack cost them more than it's worth." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. "I will lead the defense fleet personally," he declared. "Admiral Krenthus, you will coordinate with Ambassador Chun on defensive positions." He turned to Elena. "Captain Vasquez, you will command the strike force," he said. "Do what humans do best, survive the impossible and win." Preparation took 5 days. Ships from dozens of species volunteered for what everyone knew was essentially a one-way mission. The Odyssey became the flagship of the strike force, its experimental FDL drive. The same one that had accidentally brought them here would lead them into the nebula. Morrison spent 72 hours straight upgrading the drive to handle the interference in the Void Reach. "If this works, we'll punch through the nebula in one jump," she explained to Elena. "And if it doesn't?" Elena asked. "We'll be scattered across about 50 light years of space," Morrison admitted. "But probably not dead. Probably." Elena decided not to share that detail with the rest of the fleet. The defense fleet positioned itself according to Chen's strategies. He'd studied the Vecthar approach patterns and identified the most likely targets. Instead of concentrating forces at the capital like tradition dictated, he spread them across 12 key systems. Each position was a trap waiting to be sprung. Emperor Zalthar commanded from his flagship, learning human tactical doctrine. It feels wrong to hide ships behind planets, he admitted to Chun. It feels smart to anyone who wants to live, Chun replied gently. Honor is important. But so is breathing. The Vecthar hive arrived in the outer systems 3 days later. The defensive forces engaged them exactly as planned. Hit and run attacks, false retreats, concealed positions. The swarm adapted but slowly, hampered by the distance from their central intelligence. Each engagement bought time. Meanwhile, the strike force prepared to jump. Elena stood on the Odyssey's bridge, looking at the faces of her crew. 200 humans who'd accidentally stumbled into this war. Thousands of aliens who'd volunteered to follow human leadership into almost certain death. Last chance to back out, she announced to the fleet. Not a single ship withdrew. All right then, Elena said. Morrison, spin up the drive. The experimental FTL engine hummed with power that made reality itself uncomfortable. All ships link navigation systems, Morrison ordered. The fleet connected, trusting human technology with their lives. Jump in 3, 2, 1. The universe twisted. For exactly 7 seconds, the strike force existed in a state that shouldn't be possible. Then they emerged inside the Void-Reach Nebula. Sensors screamed warnings. The structure at the center was massive beyond comprehension. A biomechanical construct the size of a moon, covered in organic technology that pulsed with the consciousness of the Vecthar hive. Holy hell, Morrison whispered. Thousands of Vecthar defense ships swarmed toward them. Engage, Elena ordered. The battle that followed was chaos. The strike force fought with everything humanity had taught them. No formations, no predictable patterns, just organized chaos that the hive struggled to counter. Shah's ship took heavy damage protecting a human cruiser. Gothak's squadron executed a perfect feint that destroyed an entire Vecthar wing. Species that had been strangers weeks ago fought like they'd trained together for years. But it wasn't enough. The hive's defenses were too strong. They couldn't reach the core. Elena watched ships dying on her tactical display. Good people sacrificing themselves while she searched for a solution. Then she saw it. Morrison? What would happen if we overloaded our FTL drive inside that structure? She asked. Morrison's face went pale. It would create a localized spatial collapse, she said quietly. Everything within about 5 kilometers would be torn apart at the atomic level, including the core. Elena pressed. Including the core, Morrison confirmed. And us and anyone nearby. Elena looked at Chun. Evacuate as many crew as possible to the other ships, she ordered. Elena, no, Chun started. That's an order. Ambassador, she said firmly. Get our people out. I'll need Morrison to manage the drive. Everyone else goes. Alarms were blaring. The ship was shaking from impacts. The crew began emergency evacuation. Escape pods launched toward allied ships. Morrison stayed at her station, fingers flying over controls. You know we're not going to survive this, she said calmly. I know, Elena replied. New Jakarta? Morrison asked. New Jakarta, Elena confirmed. I'm not letting another world burn if I can stop it. Chun appeared on the bridge one last time. You're the worst captain I've ever served with, he said. Terrible decision-making, constantly puts herself in danger. Absolutely no sense of self-preservation, he smiled. It's been an honor, he finished. Tell the galaxy we meant well, Elena said. Chun evacuated on the last shuttle. The Odyssey burned toward the hive core. Vecthar ships tried to intercept, but the human vessel was moving too fast. Morrison had rerouted everything to engines. 30 seconds to impact, she announced. FTL drive? Elena asked, overloading perfectly, Morrison reported. This is going to be spectacular. Elena opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance, she ordered. It's been a privilege serving with you. The Odyssey hit the hive core at full velocity. Morrison triggered the drive overload. Reality screamed. Space itself tore open. The hive core, the Odyssey, and everything nearby ceased to exist in a flash of impossible light. The Vecthar swarm, spread across dozens of star systems, suddenly stopped. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination began drifting. Their hive mind was gone, without central intelligence. They were just organic machines waiting for commands that would never come. The defense fleet stopped shooting. Emperor Zalthar watched the Vecthar ships go silent. Did they succeed? He asked. Sensors confirmed it. The strike force was reporting victory, at a cost. The Emperor ordered a moment of silence for the fallen. 2 weeks later, the crisis was over. The remaining Vecthar had been destroyed or disabled. The galaxy was safe. A memorial was built in orbit above the capital world. It listed the names of everyone who died in the war. But one section held special prominence: the crew of the Odyssey, humanity's first representatives to the stars. Emperor Zalthar spoke at the dedication ceremony. "We built an empire on strength," he said. "We measured ourselves by conquest and glory and honor. Then came humans, who had seen worse than anything we could imagine and chose to be kind anyway." He gestured to the memorial. "They showed us that true strength is not the absence of fear, but the choice to help others despite it," he continued. "They came from a world that tried to kill them, so they feared nothing the universe could offer. And they used that fearlessness not to dominate, but to protect." The inscription on the memorial read, "They came from a world that tried to kill them, so they—" The war room filled with holographic displays showing the Vecthar advance in real time. 3 more colony worlds had gone silent in the past 6 hours. The swarm moved through space like a plague, consuming everything and leaving nothing behind. Elena stood at the tactical table with Morrison and Chun, studying the enemy's movements around them. Imperial military commanders watched with expressions that ranged from desperate hope to deep skepticism. "They move in synchronized patterns," Morrison observed. "Perfect coordination across thousands of vessels. Hive mind," Elena confirmed. "Which means they don't make individual mistakes. But they also can adapt quickly to unexpected tactics," Admiral Krenthus, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet, stepped forward. His species had 6 limbs and skin like polished stone. "What do you propose, human?" he asked. Elena pulled up records of the Vecthar's previous invasion. "Your ancestors fought them head-on," she said, studying the old battle reports, massive fleet engagements, honor duels between capital ships, traditional formations. "It is the Imperial way," Krenthus said with pride. "It cost you millions of lives and nearly destroyed your civilization," Chun pointed out gently. The Admiral's stone skin darkened. "We prevailed with honor," he insisted. "You survived," Elena corrected. "Barely, and now they're back." "Do you want to prevail with honor or actually win?" Before Krenthus could respond, new alerts flashed across the displays. The Vecthar had just destroyed the colony world of Treshanak. 4 million souls gone in minutes. The room went silent. "What do you need?" Emperor Zalthar asked Elena quietly. "Command authority over any forces willing to follow human tactics," she said. "And permission to do things your military code probably considers dishonorable." "Explain," Zalthar demanded. Elena brought up tactical scenarios, feigned retreats to draw them into ambushes, she began. False sensor readings to split their forces, targeting their command nodes, even if it means sacrificing smaller ships to get close enough. Guerrilla strikes instead of pitched battles. Basically, everything you've been taught not to do. The Imperial commanders looked horrified. "You're proposing we lie to them?" One asked in disbelief. "It's called strategy," Morrison said. "And yes, lying. Misdirection, deception, whatever wins the war. This is without honor." Another commander protested. Chun turned to face them. "Let me tell you about honor," he said quietly. "During Earth's World War II, the Nazis had very specific ideas about honorable combat. Meanwhile, resistance fighters hid in shadows, sabotaged supply lines, and used every dirty trick they could think of. Guess who history remembers more fondly? We are not desperate enough to abandon all principles," Admiral Krenthus declared. Then news arrived that another world had fallen, then another. The Vecthar were accelerating their assault at the current rate. They'd reached the capital world in 3 weeks. Emperor Zalthar watched his empire burning on the tactical displays. "Do it," he said. "Admiral Krenthus, assign ships to the human commanders. Anyone who wishes to maintain traditional tactics may do so. But I suspect most will choose survival over honor." He was right within hours. 2/3 of the Imperial fleet had volunteered to follow human leadership. The rest maintained formation around the capital, preparing for a traditional defense. Elena divided the volunteer fleet into small, mobile groups. Each group had a mix of species and ship types. Shkar served as liaison between the humans and alien crews, translating not just language, but entire ways of thinking about warfare. The first engagement happened at the Krindle system, a mining colony that the Vecthar were approaching. Elena's battle plan was simple, but required perfect timing. "We let them enter the system," she explained to her group commanders. "We show them what looks like a small, poorly defended mining operation. Then?" Shkar asked. "Then we show them what humans learned about ambush during the Vietnam War," Morrison replied. The Vecthar swarm entered Krindle, expecting easy prey. What looked like 3 outdated defense platforms and a handful of civilian ships scrambled away in apparent panic. The swarm pursued, its formation perfect and overwhelming. Then the asteroid field came alive. Ships that had been hiding with powered-down systems suddenly activated. Weapons that had been carefully positioned over days opened fire. The mining charges that Morrison had repurposed into proximity mines detonated in a carefully calculated sequence. The swarm found itself caught in a kill box. But hive minds don't panic, and the Vecthar began adapting. "They're reinforcing the center," Morrison reported from her position. "Protecting what they think is the core." "Good," Elena said. "Hit the flanks. Make them think we want to surround them." The human-led ships struck from both sides. The Vecthar compressed their formation to defend. "Exactly as planned. Now the real attack," Elena ordered. From above and below the engagement plane, where no honorable Imperial force would ever strike, hidden squadrons dropped out of stealth. They drove straight into the swarm's compressed center like a spear. Morrison had identified the Vecthar command nodes based on communication patterns. The strike teams targeted those nodes with focused fire. It wasn't elegant or honorable. It was brutal, efficient, and effective. The swarm's perfect coordination began to fracture. Individual Vecthar ships started making independent decisions. Chun coordinated the final phase. Using tactics from Sun Tzu that were over 2,000 years old, but still worked perfectly. "When the enemy is confused, attack their retreat," he quoted while directing the fleet. The Vecthar began to withdraw. The human-led forces pursued but didn't overextend. Elena had learned from Earth's military history that winning one battle meant nothing if you lost the war through overconfidence. When the fighting ended, the Krindle system was secure. The Vecthar had lost approximately 30% of their assault force. Imperial losses were less than 5%. It was the first time in recorded history that anyone had defeated a Vecthar assault with so few casualties. Back on the capital world, the council watched the battle reports in stunned silence. "They retreated," Reckoner said in disbelief. The Vecthar actually retreated. Emperor Zalthar studied the tactical breakdown. "The humans attacked from above and below simultaneously," he observed. "No Imperial commander would consider such positioning. because it violates every principle of honorable combat, Admiral Krentis said. But his voice lacked its earlier conviction. It also works, Scar pointed out. The Admiral couldn't argue with that. Celebrations began across the Allied fleet. Different species who'd never fought together before were bonding over shared victory. But Elena didn't join the celebrations. She stood in the Odyssey's observation deck. Staring at the stars, Chun found her there an hour later. "You should be celebrating," he said. "We won a battle," Elena replied. "Not the war." "The Vecthar aren't going to make the same mistake twice. Neither will we," Chun assured her. Elena turned to face him. "I lost everyone in New Jakarta," she said quietly. "My parents, my sister, my best friend. All because people with power didn't want to do what was necessary to prevent the war. They wanted to maintain honor and dignity and principles." She looked back at the stars. "So I learned that sometimes you have to put honor aside and do what needs to be done," she continued. "These aliens don't understand that yet. They think war can be noble." "You teaching them," Chun said. "I'm showing them how to survive," Elena corrected. "There's a difference." New alerts began flashing. Long-range sensors were picking up massive energy signatures. The Vecthar weren't retreating. They were regrouping, and this time, they were bringing everything. Morrison rushed to the observation deck. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, pulling up a holographic display. The scan showed a Vecthar force that made their previous assaults look like scouting parties. "How many?" Elena asked. "Over 100,000 vessels," Morrison replied. "And that's just what we can detect. The actual number is probably higher." Chine whistled low. "They're sending the full hive," he said. Elena studied the approaching swarm. "Then we need to stop thinking about defense," she said. "What do you mean?" Morrison asked. Elena's expression hardened into something that would have been familiar to any soldier from Earth's long history of desperate wars. "I mean, we find their home and we burn it," she said. "You don't win wars by defending. You win by making the enemy regret starting them." She turned to Chun. "Get me a meeting with the Emperor," she ordered. "We need to explain what a counteroffensive is." "They're not going to like it," Chun warned. "They don't have to like it," Elena replied. "They just have to survive it." In the darkness of space, the Vecthar hive advanced, and humanity prepared to teach the galaxy another lesson from its violent past. That sometimes the only way to end a war is to take it to the enemy's doorstep. The challenge came before dawn when most of the human crew was still sleeping. Gurthik, the Kavrak's warrior commander, stood outside the Odyssey, demanding single combat to restore his honor after Morrison's critique of the war chant. Morrison showed up in workout clothes, eating a protein bar. "Sure, I've got an hour before my shift," she said. "Where do you want to do this?" Gurthik seemed confused by her casual acceptance. "You understand this is ritual combat?" he asked. "A sacred tradition of my people?" "Yeah, I got that," Morrison replied. "I did mixed martial arts back home. Same basic concept. Let's go." The arena they chose was massive, built to hold thousands of spectators for important matches. Word spread quickly that a human was fighting a Kavrak's warrior, and the stands filled within the hour. Shkar tried to explain the rules to Morrison, but she waved them off. "Don't kill anyone. Don't permanently maim anyone. Fight until someone submits or can't continue," she summarized. "Got it." Emperor Zolthar himself attended, curious to see how a human would handle Kavrak's combat prowess. The fight began with Gurthak performing an elaborate ritual stance that involved all four of his arms. Morrison stood in a basic fighter stance and waited. Gurthak charged with the kind of roar that was supposed to freeze opponents with fear. Morrison sidestepped, grabbed one of his arms, and used his momentum to throw him into the arena wall. The crowd went silent. Gurthak got up looking more surprised than hurt. He attacked again, this time more carefully. Morrison fought with efficient brutality that came from years of competition and combat training. She didn't waste energy on intimidation or showmanship. She just fought to win as quickly as possible. 15 minutes later, Garthik was on the ground with Morrison's knee on his back and his primary arms locked in a submission hold. Yield? She asked politely. I yield. Garthik gasped. Morrison released him immediately and helped him stand. Good match, she said, shaking his hand the way humans did after competitions. You've got solid technique. Work on your lateral movement and you'll be even better. Then she checked her watch. Sorry, I really do have to get to engineering, she said. Thanks for the workout. She jogged out of the arena, leaving thousands of stunned aliens behind. Emperor Zalthar turned to Reckoner. She apologized for ending it quickly. He said slowly. Yes, Your Majesty, Reckoner confirmed. Because she has work to do. Yes, Your Majesty. This is deeply concerning. Later that day, the Imperial Intelligence Division presented their complete analysis of human civilization to the Grand Council. The chamber lights dimmed and holographic displays filled the air. What followed was a comprehensive journey through human history that left most of the council members visibly shaken. They saw the trenches of World War I where millions died in mud and poison gas. They watched cities burn during World War II. They witnessed the mushroom clouds over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Holocaust, the Holodomor, the killing fields of Cambodia, the Rwandan genocide, plagues that killed millions, famines that starved entire nations, climate disasters that drowned coastlines. Then came the collapse of 2109 when Earth's climate systems failed simultaneously and 2 billion people died in a single decade. Several species in the council chamber became physically ill. One delegate from a particularly peaceful species fainted and had to be carried out. Emperor Zalthar sat rigid on his throne, his flame crown burning low. Stop, he commanded after an hour of footage. The displays froze on an image of a burned city from the Resource Wars. This is one species? He asked quietly. Yes, Your Majesty, the intelligence director confirmed. All of this is from their own historical records. They do not hide what they have done to themselves. Reckoner stood on shaking legs. How are they not extinct? He demanded. That is the question we have been trying to answer. The intelligence director replied. The only explanation we have found is that humans possess an extraordinary capacity for both destruction and resilience. They survive because they refuse to stop surviving. Bring the human captain here, Zalthar ordered. Now, Elena arrived 30 minutes later, still wearing her standard uniform. She looked at the frozen image of the burned city, and her expression didn't change. I recognize that one, she said. New Jakarta, 2156. I lost my parents in that fire. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Captain Vasquez, Zalthar began. We have reviewed your species' history. All of it? Elena asked. Enough, the Emperor replied. Explain to me how your species survived such sustained destruction. Elena was quiet for a moment. We got better, she finally said. That is insufficient, Reckoner snapped. We have seen horrors in those records that would break most civilizations. How did you not only survive, but reach the stars? Elena walked closer to the council, her voice steady. Because we learned, she said. Every war taught us something. Every disaster showed us what we needed to change. We nearly destroyed ourselves about a dozen times. And each time we stepped back from the edge and asked, how do we make sure this never happens again? But you continued fighting, a counselor pointed out. We're still human, Elena replied. We still have conflicts, still disagree, still make mistakes. But we stopped trying to end the world every time we got angry. That's progress. Chun stepped forward from where he'd been observing. The key word is resilience, he explained. Humans bounced back. We've already seen the worst we could do to each other. The universe has to work pretty hard to scare us now. You are not scared of the Empire? Zolther asked, with respect, Your Majesty. No, Chun said. You threaten conquest. We've been conquered before by other humans and survived it. You show us weapons that can destroy planets. We've had weapons that could destroy our own planet and chose to put them away. You try to intimidate us with displays of power. But we've seen power used in ways that would make your empire look merciful by comparison. The chamber was silent. Finally, a young Trell counselor spoke. What could make a species so resilient? She asked. Elena smiled sadly. Necessity, she answered. When your choices are adapt or die, you learn to adapt very quickly. We've been doing it for our entire existence as a species, before anyone could respond. Alarms screamed through the council chamber. Red emergency lights flooded the room. A military officer burst through the doors. Your Majesty, we have a catastrophic emergency, the officer reported. Long-range sensors have detected the Vecthar swarm. The color drained from Zolther's face. Around the chamber, counselors began speaking in panicked voices. That's impossible, Vrekma said. The swarm was defeated 1,000 years ago. They've returned, the officer confirmed. 3 colony worlds in the Outer Rim have gone dark. No communications, no distress signals, just silence. How many ships? Zolther demanded. Sensors indicate at least 10,000 vessels, and the count is rising, the officer replied. The panic in the chamber intensified. The Vecthar swarm was the stuff of nightmares in Imperial history. A biomechanical hive mind that consumed everything in its path. It had nearly destroyed the Empire before being driven back at tremendous cost. And now it had returned. Elena looked at Chun, who nodded slightly. Your Majesty, Elena said, cutting through the panic with her calm voice. What do you know about the Vecthar? Zolther focused on her. They are a hive consciousness that assimilates technology and biological matter, he explained. They cannot be reasoned with, cannot be frightened, cannot be stopped except through complete destruction. Sounds familiar. Morrison muttered from where she stood near the door. We fought something similar on Earth, Chun explained. Rogue AI networks during the collapse. Not exactly the same, but close enough. Zolther stared at the humans. You defeated a similar enemy? He asked. Eventually, Elena confirmed. It wasn't easy and it wasn't pretty. But yes, the Emperor made a decision. The Empire requests your assistance, he said formally. In exchange? Elena asked. Freedom for your ship and your people, Zolther offered. And a place within the Empire as equals, not subjects. Elena considered this. We'll help, she finally said, but not because of the deal. We'll help because that's what you do when someone needs help. That's one of the things we learned from all those disasters. She looked around the chamber. But you need to understand something, she continued. The way we fight isn't going to look honorable or noble. We do what works, not what looks good. At this point, Zolther said quietly, I will accept any help we can get. Outside, in the darkness of space, the Vecthar swarm advanced, and humanity prepared to show the galaxy what thousands of years of survival had taught them about winning impossible fights. Shkar arrived at the Odyssey the next morning looking like someone who'd been given an impossible assignment and knew it. The alien's skin kept shifting between worried purple and resigned gray. I have been ordered to educate you about the Empire, Shkar explained, so that you might avoid further offense before your formal integration. Integration sounds ominous, Morrison noted from where she was checking hull integrity readings. It is the Empire's way, Shkar replied. All species must learn their place within the great hierarchy. Elena exchanged glances with Chun, who just sipped his coffee like they were discussing weather instead of potential conquest. All right, educate away, Elena said. Shar led a group of 30 humans through the capital world's military district, where the Empire's greatest weapons were displayed like trophies. They stopped before a massive cannon that looked like it could crack planets open like eggs. "Behold the stellar hammer," Shkar announced with obvious pride. "Capable of destabilizing a planet's core from orbit. It has brought 147 worlds to submission." The humans studied the weapon with professional interest. Morrison pulled out a tablet and started taking notes. "What's the yield on that thing?" she asked. Shkar seemed pleased by the question. "Enough energy to vaporize a continent in a single discharge," the alien explained. Morrison nodded while scribbling calculations. "Interesting ratio," she muttered. "We theorized something similar back in the 2080s, but the UN banned development after the Tokyo incident." Shar's skin went pale, which was apparently very concerning. "You have weapons of this magnitude?" the alien asked quietly. "Had," Chun corrected. "We dismantled most of them after the resource wars. Turned out having the ability to destroy ourselves multiple times over wasn't great for international relations." The next stop was the Museum of Conquered Worlds, which occupied an entire floating platform above the capital city. Holographic displays showed planets burning under orbital bombardment while populations fled or surrendered. Each display had a plaque describing the conquest in loving detail. The humans wandered through the exhibits like they were visiting any normal museum on Earth. One crew member stopped at a display showing a city in flames. "The architecture survived pretty well," he observed. "When we did Dresden and Tokyo, everything was just gone. Nothing but ash and shadows." Shkar's skin went through about 12 colors in rapid succession. "You destroyed your own cities?" The alien whispered, "World War II. Another crew member explained. "Wasn't our finest moment as a species. We got better, though." They moved to the next exhibit, which showed thousands of aliens kneeling before Kavrak's warriors. "This is the submission of Krath, where 100,000 warriors laid down their weapons rather than face complete annihilation," Shkar said. "Smart move," Elena commented. "Living to fight another day and all that." "They did not fight another day," Shkar corrected. "They accepted integration and now serve the Empire with honor." "Even smarter then," Elena said. Shar was starting to realize that nothing in the museum was having the intended effect on the humans. They weren't terrified or awed or even particularly impressed. They just looked at everything with the calm assessment of people who'd seen similar things before. The final part of the education tour involved taking the humans to watch a traditional Kavrak's war chant. 50 warriors stood in formation and began a rhythmic shouting that was supposed to make enemies flee in terror before battle even started. The sound echoed off the walls and made the ground vibrate. When it finished, the warriors looked at the humans expectantly. Morrison raised her hand. "Can I give some feedback?" she asked. Shkar looked horrified but nodded. "Your breath control is good, but the rhythm breaks in the third stanza," Morrison explained. "Also, you're all breathing at the same time, which creates dead spots in the acoustics. Try staggering it so the sound stays constant." The warriors stared at her. Their commander, a massive Kavrax named Garthak, stepped forward. "You dare critique the ancient war chant of our people?" he demanded. Only if you want it to be more intimidating," Morrison said. "I did competitive performance art back on Earth. The technique is similar." Chun decided to step in before things escalated. "Perhaps we could share some of Earth's military traditions," he offered. "As a cultural exchange?" Shkar agreed, probably hoping human traditions would be less advanced or impressive. Chun pulled up videos on a tablet showing Earth's military history. He started with ancient warfare, moved through the Gunpowder Age, and then got to the 20th century. The aliens watched footage of trenches filled with soldiers, tanks rolling across fields, bombers dropping their payloads. Then came the nuclear tests. The mushroom clouds rising over desert test sites made several species in the viewing room physically recoil. "You have antimatter weapons?" One alien gasped. "Nuclear fission and fusion," Chung corrected. "Not quite antimatter, but similar destructive capacity. We built enough of them to destroy our entire planet about 40 times over." "Why would you build so many?" Scar asked in a horrified whisper. "Mutually assured destruction," Chen explained like he was teaching a history class. The logic was that if everyone could destroy everyone else, nobody would actually use the weapons. Worked surprisingly well until it almost didn't. The aliens were silent for a long time. Finally, a young member of a species called the Trell spoke up. "How did you survive?" she asked. "Barely," Elena answered honestly. "We came very close to wiping ourselves out more than once. The fact that we're standing here talking to you is partly skill and partly dumb luck. Over the next few days, something unexpected started happening. Young aliens from various species began approaching human crew members to ask questions. They wanted to know about Earth's history, its philosophies, its survival strategies. A group of Trell engineers spent hours discussing theoretical weapon systems with Morrison. Several Kavrak's warriors asked Chun to explain human military tactics. The Empire's ruling council noticed this growing interest and didn't like it one bit. "The humans are corrupting our youth," Reckoner complained during an emergency session. "They speak of destruction and survival as if they are common things. Because for them, they are common things," Scar reported, having been present for many human conversations. Their species nearly destroyed itself multiple times. They view our Empire's threats as manageable because they have threatened themselves with far worse. Emperor Zalthar listened to these reports with growing concern. "Bring me their historical records," he commanded. "I want to understand what kind of species we are dealing with." The Imperial Intelligence Division worked through the night analyzing every piece of human data they could access. What they found in those databases changed everything. The analysts watched footage of human wars where millions died. They saw weapons that poisoned entire regions for generations. They found records of genocides, famines, and plagues that humanity had survived through sheer stubborn determination. One analyst, a being named Krysh, who specialized in psychological warfare, submitted a report that made the council go silent. "Humans are a trauma-bonded species," the report stated. "They have survived so many self-inflicted catastrophes that external threats register as manageable by comparison. They do not fear conquest because they have already conquered the worst parts of themselves." Emperor Zalthar read the report 3 times. "Schedule another council meeting," he finally said. "We need to reconsider our approach to these humans." But before the meeting could happen, alarms began screaming across the capital world. Long-range sensors had detected something emerging from deep space. Something the Empire hadn't seen in 1,000 years. The Vecthar swarm had returned, and this time, the Empire would need every ally it could find, including the strange humans who acted like they'd seen far worse than anything the galaxy could offer, because they had. The experimental drive hummed with energy that made Captain Elena Vasquez's teeth ache in a way she didn't like one bit. She stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, watching her crew run final checks on humanity's first faster-than-light engine. "All systems green, Captain," Lieutenant Morrison called from the engineering station. Elena nodded and gripped the armrests of her command chair. "All right, people. We're making history today," she said to her crew of 200 souls. "Destination: Mars orbit, travel time, 30 seconds. Let's show the folks back home what we can do." The countdown began, and Elena felt her stomach tighten the way it always did before something big happened. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. The universe twisted around them like reality itself was bending in ways it wasn't supposed to bend. Then everything went wrong all at once. Alarms screamed through the bridge as the ship lurched sideways through dimensions that shouldn't exist. "We're off course." Morrison shouted over the noise. "Something's pulling us further out." Elena's knuckles went white on the armrests, but her voice stayed calm the way it had during the resource wars, when everything around her was burning. "Kill the drive. Emergency shutdown now." But it was too late because the Odyssey had already traveled hundreds of light years in the wrong direction entirely. When the ship finally stopped shaking and the alarms went quiet, Elena looked at the view screen and saw something that made her heart skip exactly one beat. They were surrounded by ships, hundreds of them in formations so perfect they looked like military parade squares. The ships were massive and decorated with symbols that glowed purple and gold against hulls that seemed to be made of some kind of living metal. "Where the hell are we?" Elena asked nobody in particular. Ambassador Chen Wei stepped onto the bridge, looking as calm as if he'd just walked out of a boring meeting instead of humanity's first contact with alien life. "Captain, I believe we've crashed someone's party," Chen said with that slight smile he always wore when things got interesting. The view screen suddenly filled with the image of a being that could only be described as intimidating in every possible way. The creature stood 12 feet tall with 4 arms covered in ceremonial armor that probably cost more than Earth's entire GDP. Its head was crowned with what looked like actual fire that didn't seem to burn anything. "I am Emperor Zolther, Supreme Ruler of the Kavrax Empire, Master of 400 star systems, Keeper of the Eternal Flame," the being announced in a voice that sounded like thunder rolling through mountains. The Emperor continued listing titles for another 3 minutes while Elena tried very hard not to check her watch. Finally, the alien Emperor finished his introduction and stared at the humans with eyes that expected complete submission and possibly worship. "You will identify yourselves and explain why you have interrupted the sacred parade of unity with your primitive vessel," Zolther commanded. Elena glanced at Chun, who gave her a tiny nod that meant "be yourself." "Sorry." "Wrong neighborhood," Elena said, in the same tone she'd used to apologize for taking someone's parking spot. "We'll just be going." The Emperor's face did something that might have been the alien equivalent of a shocked expression. Around them, the massive fleet suddenly shifted positions, and the Odyssey found itself surrounded by weapons that could probably turn their ship into its component atoms. "You dare speak to the Emperor with such casual disrespect?" a new voice demanded. Another alien appeared on screen, this one with 6 eyes and skin that looked like it was made of stone. "I am High Chancellor of Reckoner, and you will show proper deference or face immediate destruction." Chun stepped forward and bowed slightly, which was probably the closest thing to deference anyone was going to get from the humans today. "Forgive us, High Chancellor," Chun said smoothly. "We are new to this region of space and unfamiliar with your customs. We mean no offense. Ignorance is no excuse." Reckoner snapped. "The Kavrax Empire has ruled the sector for 10,000 years. All species know to show respect." Elena leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. 10,000 years is impressive," she said. "We've only been in space for about 300 years, and we nearly blew ourselves up at least twice in that time. So you're doing better than us." The aliens on the screen seemed confused by this response, which clearly wasn't fear or submission. Emperor Zolther's burning crown flared brighter. "You will be detained pending judgment by the Grand Council," he declared. "Prepare to be boarded." The crew tensed, but Elena raised a hand to keep them calm. "Do we need to fill out any forms for that?" she asked. The alien Emperor blinked all 3 of his eyes separately, which created a rippling effect that might have been confusion. "Forms?" He repeated. "Yeah, paperwork," Elena explained. "For the detention thing, back home we had to fill out forms for everything during the UN integration period. Drove everyone crazy, but at least there was a process." Char, the cultural liaison assigned to educate the humans. materialized on the Odyssey an hour later via transporter beam. The alien was tall and thin with skin that changed colors based on emotion apparently. Right now, Shkar was a concerned shade of purple. "I am here to prepare you for your appearance before the Grand Council," Shkar explained. "You must understand the severity of your situation. 47 species will witness your judgment. Most expect you to be made examples of." Morrison looked worried, but Elena just shrugged. "We've been made examples of before," she said. "Usually doesn't stick." Shkar's color shifted to something between purple and orange, which probably meant confusion mixed with concern. "You do not understand," the alien insisted. "The Empire does not tolerate disrespect. You could face integration through conquest. Your world could be subjugated." Chun poured himself coffee from the mess hall dispenser and offered some to Shkar, who declined. "We appreciate the warning," Chun said. "But humanity has survived worse than subjugation. We've survived ourselves, which is considerably more difficult." Shkar's skin went completely orange. "I do not understand your species," the alien admitted. "That makes two of us," Elena said with a tired smile. The Grand Council chamber was enormous and filled with representatives from species humanity had never imagined could exist. There were beings made of crystalline structures, creatures that seemed to exist partially in other dimensions, and things that looked like they'd crawled out of nightmares before deciding to wear fancy robes instead. Emperor Zalthar sat on a throne that floated above everyone else, because apparently subtle wasn't in the Empire's vocabulary. "Humans of Earth," the Emperor's voice boomed through the chamber. "You stand accused of disrespect to the Empire, casual dismissal of our authority, and general failure to show appropriate fear. How do you plead?" Elena stood and looked around at the assembled aliens. "Not guilty?" she said, making it sound like a question. "Look, we really didn't mean to crash your parade. Our drive malfunctioned. We're not trying to disrespect anyone. We're just trying to get home. Your intent is irrelevant." Reckoner shouted, "You will be integrated into the Empire through conquest." "Is there a form for that?" Elena asked again. The chamber fell silent. Emperor Zalthar's crown burned so bright it hurt to look at directly. "You mock us even now?" he demanded. "No," Elena said honestly. "I'm really asking, do you have a process? Because if we're going to be part of your empire, we should probably know how that works, right?" The aliens looked at each other with expressions that suggested they'd never encountered anything quite like humans before, and they were absolutely right about that.